Whew, what about this one? I tell you what, Oregon was fortunate to walk out of there with a win. Kind of got lucky they had those 2 special team touchdowns. Cade McNamara has a Cade McNamara performance, 13 for 29, 99 passing yards with 2 interceptions. Nice. And I think this is the lowest QBR I've ever seen in my life, 1.2. Imagine a man for 10 years on the internet saying Notre Dame is the most overrated program and they're banned from being ranked inside my top 10, finally putting Notre Dame in the top 10, and the very next week, they lose to Northern Illinois. It's not funny, it's not comical, it's just like, bro, you can't make this crap up. The very next week, only a few days after I put Notre Dame in my top 10, they go out here and do this against Northern Illinois. They embarrass me.
Thanks for getting the TV fixed.
You see it? You see it? You see it?
All about that.
How about you?
All about that.
What happened?
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is time for everybody's favorite video of the week. It's the video you look forward to the most, the Sunday recap. This is always a highly anticipated video, but this week's episode, I think it's more than safe to say this might be a little higher than normal. And it's for what unfolded yesterday. Chaos, it is already ensuing. We've got a lot to talk about and go over, and there's a ton of major topics we got to speak on as well. So many notable headlines. You obviously got the Texas-Michigan game. Alabama struggling yet again in week 2. You know we're going to talk about that. And a game I don't think anybody had circled. And no, I'm not talking about Notre Dame, Northern Illinois. Penn State and Bowling Green. That was a strange game to watch and a game I thought was going to be good. Oklahoma State and Arkansas. I've already slept on it and I still can't fathom how Arkansas managed to screw that up. I got to give a ton of credit to all of our 11 a.m. games. They were down to the wire and they were great. Tulane gave Kansas State all they can handle, and you could argue and say that K-State is fortunate to walk out of there with a win. Georgia Tech, remember them? They're in the top 25. They beat Florida State. Well, they went down to Syracuse, and Syracuse's new quarterback, who I'm going to talk about a lot in this video, Kyle McCord. Obviously one of the main focal points, Northern Illinois, Notre Dame. Iowa and Iowa State went out to the water. In Tennessee, watch out for good old Rocky Top. They're looking like one of the best teams in the nation. Yeah, that's right. You heard me correctly. Tennessee, and I'm not scared to say it, is looking like one of the best teams in the nation. We'll talk more about that in just a second. Oklahoma struggling with a Houston team that's not that great. Speaking of struggling, Oregon, yet again, barely, and I mean barely, sneaks out of there with a win against Boise State. You didn't think I was going to forget about this game, did you? California goes into one of the most hostile environments in the SEC and wins. Auburn's quarterback plays awful. There's some controversy going on there. Speaking of awful quarterback play, Kentucky's quarterback had one of the worst performances you're ever going to see. Florida's new star and prestigious quarterback made his debut, and fans are already loving him. Nebraska gives Dion a good old-fashioned butt whooping, and that is just the beginning of all the stuff we're going to talk about. Before we get into things, I do want to apologize. This video is being uploaded a little later than normal. Last night, not only was it a busy night, but it was a long one. I was up till probably 5, 6 a.m. and then woke back up at like 8:30 or 9 a.m. Only slept a couple hours, so just stick with me. I'm excited to get into this video. Hope you guys are excited as well. Strap in, buckle up, get you a snack, get you a popcorn, get your favorite meal you like to eat when you watch a video, because trust me, I do the same thing. But all right, Matt, blah, 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 shut the crap up. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, if you're new here, we start out with our 11 a.m. games first and work our way down. At least that's what we try to do. We'll get this one out of the way, short and simple. Texas and Michigan. Sometimes in this life, you go up against a certain someone or something, and they're better than you. That's what happened on Saturday. And since I predicted this game to a T, I stated that Texas would go into Donkey Kong, Bing Bong, Ping Pong, Smash Michigan. There's not too much more I need to say because what I said was going to happen, it did happen, and I don't want to repeat myself. Michigan did get a late touchdown at the end to make it somewhat respectable, but this wasn't close. Like I said in my reaction video, Texas had the better quarterback, offensive line, defensive line, secondary, DBs, linebackers, kickers, punter. You name the position group, Texas was just simply better than Michigan at it. I still think Michigan can be a solid / and this is their potential, right, good football team. But what happened Saturday is you just played an elite team that was clicking on all cylinders. I don't need to sit up here and show you the stats, box score. There's nothing really to talk about. Moving along here to something that's interesting. Penn State, they sneak out a win against Bowling freaking Green. I've received a lot of comments the past years, and I'll pop one up right here, and even this year. People saying, man, I can't believe you don't have Penn State in your top 10, bro. Why don't you have them in the top 10? And it's because I say the same thing every single year. They're irrelevant. Until Penn State can win a big-time football game and James Franklin can't do that, I'm not taking them serious, and you shouldn't either. If there's one team I've been spot on the money, dead right about for my entire career talking about sports, it's been Penn State. They win the games they're supposed to win, so credit to them for that. But the games that they're not favored in and it's a hard test, they lose. And not only do they lose more times than not, they have a hard time competing. Penn State's still playing football like the 1990s. I think in the first half, Drew Aller only threw the ball 7 or 8 times. I know they have great running backs in Singleton and Allen, but come on, man. You got to let your quarterback get comfortable, get in a rhythm, and throw the dang ball. Do I think Drew Aller is on the level of even like a J.J. McCarthy last year? Absolutely not, but he can be good. Penn State is a solid ball club, nothing more, nothing less. As to why people still have him in the top 10, I have no idea. It blows my mind. Another 11 a.m. game. What about this? Arkansas and Oklahoma State. In my heart, it hurts for Arkansas fans. Of all the fan bases that got to be infuriated after yesterday's performances, Arkansas fans got to be up there. For me, myself, and I, nothing pisses me off more than losing a game we should have won. It's just like, man, how did they squander that away? They were up 14-0 driving, and their quarterback, who I think is going to be really good, Green, throws a 75-yard pick six. Oklahoma State couldn't even move the ball on offense. Arkansas's defense was playing amazing. Then guess what happens when Oklahoma State has zero momentum? Arkansas, they miss a field goal that would have won them the game, or eventually would have won them the game because it would have gave them a bigger lead. And also, they fumble a punt return. The field goal's like, whatever. But the punt return, that's what gave Oklahoma State all the momentum. I believe on the next play, Ollie Gordon ran it in. By the way, speaking of Ollie Gordon, that man struggled. As to why he's still in the Heisman conversation, I have no idea. I did pick Oklahoma State to win this game, but I'm just so mad they won because I was rooting for Arkansas. Their fan base, they need to win games like that because every single year, they somehow lose games like that. I don't know how they do it. If we have some Arkansas fans, let me know in the comment section how mad you are, because I'm mad for you, and I could care less about Arkansas football. I guess it's just I have a ton of sympathy and empathy for the fan base because they've been going through it. Instead of sitting pretty 2-0, you beat a top 25 team on the road, you're now 1-1, and you're already talking about, well, is this season over? Is this how every game's going to go? Just a terrible place to be. On the flip side for Oklahoma State, you're sitting pretty because you're like, well, dang, we played awful and we won? This is nice. Oklahoma State, though, is not a very good football team. As to why people are high on them, as to why they're even ranked inside the top 25, I have no idea. I felt the same about them last year. They was a fringe top 25 team, and I was like, what are we doing? These guys aren't good. Whatever, though. That's the Big 12 for you. Another 11 a.m. game. We got K-State and Tulane. What was crazy about this, and if you were anything like myself, so I was watching the K-State game, Tulane game, Arkansas and Oklahoma State, and Penn State and Bowling Green all at one time. Shout out to YouTube TV because I was watching 4 games at once. If you know what I'm talking about, you know they have that new mode where you can just pop up 4 games. What I couldn't figure out in this game, and I'm still having a hard time trying to decipher, is Tulane a really good ball club, solid ball club, or is K-State overrated? I like K-State. I like their quarterback, Avery Johnson, but Tulane probably should have walked out of there with a win. I felt like Tulane outplayed him. And by the way, what about that pass interference call at the end? Tulane got robbed. That's all there is to it. Hate it for them and their fan base because I was rooting for them. I wanted to see an underdog win a game. What about this game? 2-0 Georgia Tech goes into Syracuse and Kyle McCord lights them up. I will die on this hill. I said it when he left. Ohio State fans are going to find out the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Kyle McCord was not the problem last year at Ohio State, and those fans ran him out. I told everybody he's going to go to Syracuse and ball out, and that's exactly what he's doing. 32 for 46, 380 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 INTs. Love to see that. Clean football, QBR of 82. They walk out of there with the win, but hold on. Like Lee Corso says, not so fast, my friend. Got to give some props to Haynes King. He balled out as well. 29 for 39. Very nice. 266 passing yards with 1 touchdown, 0 INTs, QBR of 92.7. Big win for the Cuse, and don't look now, but they're 2-0 in a conference that's not so good. I'm not trying to sit up here and say Syracuse is a team you should watch out for, but when you play in the sorry and sucky ACC, who knows what could happen. I tell you this much, I like their chances with Kyle McCord back there. And since we're talking about McCord and his situation at Ohio State, I'll speak about this now because I'm not going to talk about the Ohio State game because you played a cupcake. I'm not degrading Will Howard at all. I'm just saying, and I will continue to say it, Will Howard isn't an upgrade from Kyle McCord. Will Howard and Kyle McCord, in my humble opinion, are 1A, 1B. But Will Howard is not better. I like McCord. I liked him last year at Ohio State. So for the Ohio State fans trying to say, oh, Matt, you're just hating on Ohio State. No, I'm not, because I was hyping him up last year when he was on your team. So calm down, buddy. Calm down. Also, at 11 a.m., you know we got to talk about it. Northern freaking Illinois storms into Notre Dame and upsets them 16-14. I can't tell you enough how frustrated I am with myself because you know why if you've been watching the channel and keeping up with the videos. My entire life, I have said the same thing over and over and over and over. I have banned Notre Dame for being ranked inside my top 10. It didn't matter how good Notre Dame has been the past 10 years. I've never in the history of my channel, when I come out with my rankings on whenever we do it, it's like a Tuesday, sometimes we do it on Monday, sometimes Wednesday, I've never put Notre Dame in my top 10. I have banned them from being in there just because I think they're overrated every single year. I say it over and over and over and over. Notre Dame is the most overrated college football program of all time, and it's not even close. But, and unfortunately I have a big but, I went against my golden rule. After that game against Texas A&M, I thought Notre Dame looked good. I like Marcus Freeman, what he's doing there. I thought Riley Leonard would pick up the pieces because I thought the offense couldn't have played too much worse than he did at A&M. I thought they would be better, so I ranked them inside my top 10. And you can't make it up. It's the definition of God talking to me and sending me a sign. The very next week, only a few days after I put Notre Dame in my top 10, they go out here and do this against Northern Illinois. They embarrass me. It's not funny. It's not comical. It's just like, bro, you can't make this crap up. Imagine a man for 10 years on the internet saying Notre Dame is the most overrated program and they're banned from being ranked inside my top 10. Finally putting Notre Dame in the top 10, and the very next week, they lose to Northern Illinois. I can't emphasize this enough. I am so upset at myself that I got tricked. I got bamboozled. But in this life, like I say, it's not what happens to you. It's how you respond to what happens to you. And I'm going back to my old ways. Notre Dame's banned from being ranked inside my top 10. And from here on out, they will never be ranked inside my top 10. I'm going back to being a professional Notre Dame hater. And I'm sorry, I'm not sorry. You're not going to embarrass me like that on my channel. It's just not going to happen. Or I guess I shall say, it's not going to happen again. Fool me once, shame on you, and that's where we're at. You only fool me once, you're not fooling me twice, because then that'd be shame on me. Let's talk about the game itself. This was not, by any stretch of the imagination, a fluky win. And if I was a Notre Dame fan, that's what would concern me the most, moving forward. Northern Illinois just ran the ball down your mouth. This wasn't some air raid offense. No, they just lined up and said, our guys are better than yours, and they straight up beat you. On the day, they outgained you by 102 total yards as well. Northern Illinois on the day had 190 rushing yards, and here's what's most impressive about that. They didn't break off some 75-yarder, no. They just got 4 yards, 5 yards per carry. It was nothing fancy. Their longest run on the day was 28 yards. They did have that one explosive pass play, but outside of that, it was hard-nosed football. Quarterback did his job, did what he needed to do, and he put his team in a position to win. One of the key elements if you want to upset a team in the top 5 or top 10 is your quarterback. We always think, man, he's got to play like Superman Cam. He's got to play like prime Baker Mayfield or Johnny Manziel, but sometimes if you just go in there and you don't make a mistake, that might be better than all that. And oh yeah, I can't forget to mention one of their star players, their running back. He got banged up and was hurt for a majority of the game. For Notre Dame on offense, you couldn't run the ball, you couldn't pass the ball, you couldn't do much of anything. Riley Leonard is looking like one of the biggest frauds in the nation, and similar to Notre Dame, on brand here, looking like one of the most overrated quarterbacks in the nation. I'm kind of shocked at how pathetic he's looked in these first couple of weeks. I hope I'm not the only one. Really hate to see that for him. He seems like a good guy, but he's playing like DJ Oogabadoogie. All in all, not too much more to say. You shouldn't have won this game, Notre Dame, and you didn't. That's enough of that. Illinois, they upset Kansas. How about that? Brett Bielema got Illinois sitting pretty at 2-0. Sucky and sorry Iowa, who I have stated is overrated and they're banned from my top 25. They lose in the most Iowa way possible to Iowa State. Cade McNamara has a Cade McNamara performance, 13 for 29, 99 passing yards with 2 interceptions. Nice. Much respect to Iowa State's kicker for nailing a 54-yarder to win the game. I'd say one of the more notable games that I was paying attention to at 2:30. You didn't have a ranked matchup, but you had California, a West Coast team, traveling to Auburn, Alabama. And man, oh man, if you didn't watch this game, you missed a interesting one, I'll say that much. So California played good. Their quarterback was very solid, 25 of 36, 230, 2 touchdowns, 0 INTs, QBR of 85. It was the other quarterback in this game, old Peyton Thorne, that gathered all the attention, and it wasn't good attention. He had not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 interceptions. The craziest part about that stat line is he should have had 6. One of them got called back, or now that I think about it, did 2 of them get called back? I don't know, but we'll just say bare minimum. He should have had 5. He wound up with 4. Auburn's still Auburn, not a very good team. They'll wind up going 6-6, 7-5 this year, something like that. So I've said Colorado is the same Colorado team as last year. Well, it's the same thing for Auburn. Hugh Freeze is washed up, and he doesn't know what he's doing there. At 2:30, this was one of the biggest shockers to me. South Carolina, who looked pitiful in week 1, they drumroll Kentucky 31-6. This was one of the more bizarre outcomes to me on Saturday. For those of you who don't know, Brock Vandagriff is a former, was he a 4 or 5? I don't know. He was either a 4 or 5-star quarterback recruit. He was the backup to Carson Beck at Georgia. And remember, at one point in time, he was competing with Carson Beck for a starting job. And we know how good Carson Beck is. So that's got to speak volumes about Vandagriff, right? Well, apparently not. Goes to Kentucky, wins the starting job, and God, he just couldn't do anything yesterday. You know how many completions he had? 3. 3 completions for 30 yards and 1 interception. And I think this is the lowest QBR I've ever seen in my life. 1.2. For those of you who don't know, QBR is based on a scale of 1 to 100, 50 being average. Now, with that being said, I will give him a little bit of leeway. His offensive line was beyond pathetic. And that's the biggest storyline of this game. Kentucky couldn't score points, and South Carolina, they capitalized, so give credit to them. Going on down here, Florida beats Sanford. Who cares, because Sanford is not a very good opponent, but their quarterback, Lagway, 18 for 25, 400, yes, Florida quarterback, 456 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, QBR of 85.1. How about that? Does this impress me? Gotta be honest, and Florida fans might not like to hear this. No, you played Sanford. Do this against the SEC team, DJ Lagway, and we got a different conversation on our hands. He looked good, but we've seen this story before. Most quarterbacks do look good against inferior teams. For example, Peyton Thorne looked outstanding last week against Alabama A&M. I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy, a Debbie Downer, or whatever you want to call it. I'm just trying to stay even keel when you play not so good teams. Tennessee beats the absolute brakes off of NC State, and this is very similar to the Texas-Michigan game. I predicted Tennessee to blow them out. That's what happened, so I don't have much to say. Nico Iamaleava played good outside of that 1 pick 6. My biggest takeaway from this game is that Tennessee defense is the real deal, but NC State's offense ain't that good, so you can kind of, I don't want to say take it with a grain of salt, but remember, NC State, if they're in the SEC, they go 5-7, 6-6. Tennessee's defense looked amazing. Let's get into one of the biggest games, Colorado and Nebraska. I nailed this one on the head. I had Nebraska winning by 11 points. They won by 18. This game was over in the second quarter. Nebraska got up 28-0 after that crazy touchdown deflection pass that was almost intercepted, and they were just on cruise control. Colorado is not a real football team. We know this. They're an AAU basketball team. They got a couple good players, and the coach rolls the ball out on the floor and tells them to go make a play. By the way, Shadir Sanders, one of the worst passes I've seen him throw. What about that pick 6? What was he thinking? Terrible pass there, and I think he wound up blaming it on the wide receiver in the postgame interview. We'll get to that probably either later tonight or no, we'll do that tomorrow. I don't want to talk about Colorado anymore, so let's talk about a real football team, and that's Nebraska. Dylan Raiola, he wasn't phenomenal, but he played good. 23 for 30, that's a nice completion percentage. Buck 85, 1 touchdown, 0 INTs. He took care of the ball. Nebraska did okay running, but the reason Nebraska won this game is because of how great their defense played. I know easily they have a top 25 defense, but I'm starting to think they might be a top, dare I say, 15 defense in the nation. They're all over the field. Granted, it's easy when you play Colorado because their offensive line is pathetic. But shout out to Nebraska. That is a great win, not just for this team, but for the program. I thought Nebraska's fan base and culture needed this game way more than Colorado's because, to be quite frank, honest with all of you, Colorado doesn't have a culture. Very impressive win there. And what about this? Oklahoma struggling with Houston? 16-12? Houston's not very good, and if I was an Oklahoma fan, I'd be worried after that performance, and that's all I'm going to say about it. I will give Clemson some credit against an Appalachian State team who we've known is known for competing with your big boys They went in there and they took care of business, and I think there's something to be said about that. You know I'm going to get to it. Alabama, to say they were on the struggle bus against South Florida, that wouldn't do it any justice. Not to discredit South Florida, but Alabama almost beat Alabama Saturday night. One of the most embarrassing performances I've seen an Alabama team have since the national championship game in which Clemson just beat their eyes in. It goes back to this. It's a similar argument for Oregon, and we're going to get to them in just a second, saving that late night game for last. Alabama's offensive line couldn't block, and that's why this game was close. Remember when Alabama played South Florida last year outside the quarterback dilemma? It was a similar situation. Last year in South Florida, offensive line couldn't block. This year in Tuscaloosa, offensive line couldn't block. I don't even want to start screaming and stuff and get pissed off because I did all that last night in my reaction video. If you haven't seen it, feel free to check it out. But good gosh almighty, man. 75 and 53. If you watch this game, both of those guys had 3 holding calls apiece, and it could have been more. I feel like the refs just felt bad for him and didn't throw flags at the end of the game. Jalen Milroe played fantastic. He couldn't have done much more with that offensive line, man. And we know this. Alabama running backs, they're great. Wide receivers played great. It's just, if we could get the offensive line to clicking, we could be a good football team. At the end of the game, we did turn it on because we made some substitutions, and that made all the difference in the world. If you aren't keeping up with Alabama, it is worth mentioning their best lineman, Caden Proctor, he's been out with a minor injury. He should return from what I'm hearing. I made a phone call this morning. He should return next week or this up-and-coming week against Wisconsin. If he doesn't return against Wisconsin, he'll more than likely be back against Georgia, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. Point is, he's out, so that's been affecting the line play. Really, there's not much more to it. Alabama's defense played insanely well considering all the bad positions the offense put them in. In the second half alone, Alabama had 3 fumbles. It was a living nightmare. Nick Saban was at the game because he was being honored because we're naming the field after him, and he was even seen shaking his head. And last but not least, what was driving me crazy was all the penalties. 13 penalties for 120 yards. I don't care if we play a team like Texas or Georgia and they just beat us because they're better than us. Where I care is when we make mental mistakes and we play undisciplined football and we're not playing to the best of our abilities, and that's what happened against South Florida. That's all I'm going to say about that before I go on a major rant and tangent. Last but not least, had the best for last, Oregon and Boise State. Whew, what about this one? I tell you what. Oregon was fortunate to walk out of there with a win. Kind of got lucky they had those 2 special team touchdowns. Tez Johnson had the kick return touchdown to put them up 27-20. Then, when Oregon was trailing 34-27, they have a kickoff return touchdown. They win this game, but the biggest storyline is they still can't run the ball, and that offensive line is awful. I said it a couple days ago, Oregon, they're not going to resolve this offensive line issue. You can't fix this in 8 to 10 weeks. And this is how I know it's bad. It was late in the game, 34-34. Oregon's trying to get in position to kick a game-winning field goal. It was 3rd and 1. And you know what they did? They faked like this tight end quarterback sneak to do a play-action bootleg on 3rd and 1. Some people would say, oh, that was a smart play call, which I guess you could argue. But my biggest takeaway is you don't believe that you can get 1 yard against Boise freaking State. Sure, they escaped with a win, but the biggest storyline is yet again, you averaged 3.1 yards rushing. There's many more things I could say. I hope I touched on all the teams. I think I did that I wanted to touch on. I got to hurry up and get this video edited and uploaded for you guys. Sorry it's late once again. I'm curious. Let me know your thoughts down below. But